In this video, I'm going to briefly go over setting up an AE-200 or EW50 using the Initial Settings tool. You can either create a new file or open an existing file. For this example, we're going to create a new one. So here on the main system configuration page, I can select which type of controller I'm connecting to. AE-200 or EW50 are going to be the most common. There's a couple other options here that you may or may not end up using. If you have an AE-200 with other EW50s or AE-50s as expansion controllers, you can check the boxes and put in their IP addresses. So for this one, I'm going to put in the default IP address of 192.168.1.1. All the controllers ship with this as the default address. You need to hit save before you move between pages. Also, before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and actually save this document or this data file. So this is going to save as a set.dat file settings. So I'm going to call this one example. And I save that. So now, any of these changes I make, when I hit File Save, it'll save that and I can open it up at a later time. This means you can pre-configure this at the office and send it out to someone in the field to load to the panel. So here on Basic System, you can give a name to the AE-200. So I'm going to call this one AE-200 Example. If you're connected live to the panel, you can actually use this. You can acquire the software version and the serial number if you wanted to. MNet settings, generally leave this alone. There's external inputs available. There's some examples here. Reference the installation and more detailed manuals for that if you need to use that. Down here we have units of temperature, pressure, different formats on how things are displayed. Whether you're showing room temperature on the LCD for the web access, occupancy icons, whether you're showing humidity or not. So if we had multiple central controllers, we can select them up here on this drop-down menu. So save this, move on. Our next main page is going to be the unit settings and groups. Groups is where we're going to be setting up our fan coils. So for example, I'm going to go IDU, name this one Indoor Unit 1. Based on the Diamond System Builder file I have, I know that this one is address 1. And it also happened to be a wall unit. So I'm going to select the appropriate icon. The icon selection is not necessary, but does make it easier to look at. My next one I have is IDU2. This one is going to be, this one's address 2, and that one was a ducted fan coil for this example. IDU address 3 IDU3 is actually a group of 3 and 4. This is a large zone where I've got multiple fan coils connected. So IDU3 and 4 is what I can call the group name. So this actually registers as 2 different addresses. Now what I can do from here is this number over here is the group number. This is what would be referenced in an integration if the building automation contractor is integrating it. So I can put something at group 4, and the lowest address I can start at is address 5, or I can skip that one and move on to group number 5. And that's what I'm going to do in this scenario because we are going to look into how to set up the BACnet on it, and it's better to skip these addresses so the MNet address and the group address match each other. Generally easiest for integration. So I'm going to call this one IDU5, and that one was a ceiling cassette, so we'll leave that the same here. IDU5 is also going to differ from the other ones on this setup, and then it's going to have an ME controller, which is a networked remote controller. So that one's at address 105. The other ones have MA controllers connected, so they don't get an address here. This is obsolete, so you won't end up setting anything here. And the same with this. You're not going to be setting up anything with those 2 options. These 2 will be the only ones you'll likely ever use. So I'm going to save that. Refrigerant system, this is not required to be set up. The interlocked Lossnay. What I can do here is if I've got a Lossnay ventilation unit, I can either add on my groups page, I can add a Lossnay here, so let's call this one ERV1. I'm going to have ERV1 is address 6, and this happens to be a Lossnay unit. And so I'm going to save that. I've also got one at address 7 that I want to have interlocked with zones with addresses 3 and 4. So interlocked Lossnay, I'm going to take, or I'll take address 6, I'll use that Lossnay, and I'll interlock it with zones 3 and 4. So now I've got that Lossnay, I've got it interlocked with 3 and 4. There we go. Now these zones will occupy that Lossnay. On my blocks, a block is a group of groups. I can either press this short button to copy it over from group settings, or rename it and have certain selections in here. So I could say let's have zones 1, 2, addresses 1 and 2 are in one block, 3 and 5 are in another, and 6 is all by itself. That's the Lossnay. You'll notice how there is no group 4 that I have selectable here. That's because indoor units address 3 and 4 are on group number 3, and I skipped group number 4. So there's no group to add to this block. This is not useful if this is going to be an integration. This is useful if you were using the touchscreen or the web interface, as this could allow for different tenant subcontrol, i.e. you could have one tenant on one group, one on another, just for ease of scheduling and commanding of the fan coils. Energy management block and some of these other ones, these are more advanced functions that you likely will not set up. Under floor settings, you can select the total number of floors. You can select a layout. So if I had numerous zones, I could have multiple sections of the floor. In this case, it's small, so I'm just going to stick with this. And first floor, call it that. I can import a graphics file. There's details in the manual on the specific size that has to be and how it's laid out. On floor layout, with or without a graphics file, I can, in assignment mode, I can grab units and drag and drop them where I want. If we had a floor plan, it could be you put these over the individual room. If you want to remove one, you would select deletion mode and pull that back off. So I'm going to put this back on, or you can click and move around until you get it in your desired spot. Floors for the integrated central control web. This you can copy over from your regular floor layouts, or you can create your own central control web floor layout or floors. So you can actually have more detailed graphics on here than what you would have on the touch screen for the AE-200. So I copied it over, but we could do something different there if we wanted to. Billing functions, interlocks, and other function settings are generally going to be items that a basic setup or a setup that is going to be hooked up to a building automation system are not going to be anything you're going to do. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and save the file. And then this, I can actually reopen this file later on. So in this one, I've got quite a few here. Here's there's my actual training lab AE-200. And this is the file that I load into this controller. IP address is the same because it is actually the same unit. So now my indoor unit settings are slightly different because this is actually what I have previously built and what is installed in the system. So I didn't, my floor layout is as such. For this, now I can go ahead and I open this up, or the one we created. We can go ahead and send settings, and this will send the settings to the panel. I can also, there's a couple other options in this tool for registering licenses. In this, you can see what licenses you have available and apply new licenses. So data acquisition. This would be useful if you are setting up a BACnet system, because you will need to apply the BACnet license. So here it shows what's available and not available. This one already has the BACnet connection license available. If it didn't, I could type in the license number here and hit register. This can also be done from the touch screen. If you have that, you have to do it this way from the EW50. There is also a help menu available. No, scratch that. I was thinking about a different program. So there we go. I'm not going to send the settings here, but because it's already loaded into my controller and I want to get on to the next video. So we're going to close out. Thank you for watching, and the next one up will be how to configure BACnet.